problem to have though.
Okay, it's 7:30. We will call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. The only things that we can discuss tonight are the things that are on the agenda. The return to school plan and items removed from the return to school plan and some of those discussions. I thank you guys all for being here. We so appreciate the support and your presence makes to us tonight. What I would like to do is I'd like to start to discuss the return to school plan and have you guys see it probably for the first time, and then maybe have a few discussions, a short discussion afterwards on things you may see as issues, you see that would work, may not work. If we can do that, that would be great, and that way we can all kind of be on the same page when we start school. Okay? So the first thing we're going to go ahead with is the discussion on the return to school plan. Mr. Wilson?
Okay. First of all, we spent some time on this as administrators, and we visited with different groups. Curriculum councils, one come to mind, some members of curriculum council. We've gone over some things and sent out the operational portion of this plan to people to take a look at, and a lot of the ideas come, of course, from the recommendations of KSD's committees that they put together through the summer, and we adopted that, tried to adopt that along with what we saw coming down with the governor's order, and combine some of those things to try to fit Norton and our situation here, which can be different obviously than some of the city schools and some of the other areas of the state that are in a totally different situation. Now, so one of the first things we did, I think we need to keep in mind really, is that we know this is very difficult and it's very stressful for everyone, trying to figure out how to deal with something we've not ever dealt with before. And we understand that. I think everyone needs to remember that what we're looking at is trying to figure out what's best for our kids coming back to school and for our staff who will be in school. And yet give our students the best opportunity to learn this fall. Last spring was sudden. We had to shut down with very little time. They came up with an emergency plan basically to try to continue some learning through the spring. I thought our staff did a great job with what they had for time, but this fall will be different and will not be the same as last spring. We still probably haven't had the amount of time to prepare maybe as you would like, just because things keep changing and information keeps changing. I was on a webinar today with KSDE and talk about remote learning, and stuff just changes every day, and there's a lot of frustration on there from superintendents because people are working on their plans and what they're hearing doesn't always match up with what they were thinking was going to happen. So just keep in mind we're trying to do the best we can. This will change, probably change through the fall, may change before we start school in August. And our situation in Norton might change, which could change a lot of things by the time we start school. So when we look at this, we have, this kind of comes from the plan of the state's plan of the navigating change, and like I said, the governor's order we also put into that. So the options we are looking at, three main options, On-site, which is recommended the most, is to have students on site. And it's what we've heard the most, I think, at least I have, from parents in the community, is to get kids back in school. So I think a majority of people, and I think when we saw our survey, on-site was what they want to see. But there are reservations, there are concerns with on-site as well. So we have to do it in a safe way. The second option is parent choice remote, and we call it that because it's where parents decide they want to keep their child home and for health reasons, whatever. We'll talk about them a little bit more as we go here. Then remote learning is if we get a phone call and they say, we've got cases in the elementary, let's say, and we got to shut down either a whole level of classes or several classes, and they have to go to remote learning. Or maybe the whole district has to go to remote learning. So these two aren't exactly the same thing necessarily. Okay? We'll talk a little bit, especially of course mask is something everyone wants to talk about, face coverings. We'll go through these a little bit too as we go along. And then a little bit about food service and transportation. Food service is still some questions. Transportation, I think we're getting that lined out. Okay, so our on-site learning, students and staff attend on-site with health and safety protocols put in place. And when they talk to us about this, it's when there's a low level of community restrictions, which is what we have in Norton. Right now, numbers are down. There's like a couple of cases, only one new case recently. So we would have definitely low levels of community restrictions at this time. A couple of weeks ago, that might not be the case. So on-site learning is the recommended there for that. Parents' choice for K through 12 is an option for parents, for families. Like I said, it was set up for students that have a risk. Generally, it's a health risk. And it would not be safe for them to come to school, because if they got COVID, they'd end up in the hospital or worse. So that was the idea behind it. Now, some people may just be concerned about the risk to go at all, whether their children have a health issue or not, and they want to look at this option. So we need to be sure we explain this. There's still a lot of question about remote learning around the state. I can tell you that, in all size schools. Okay, now, in going through this a little bit on remote learning and parent choice remote learning, first of all, a parent or a guardian will help facilitate their child's learning. So, that's the first thing. You have to have someone that's able to supervise them. Now, it can be supervised if someone's babysitting, whatever. If that's someone you want to put in charge of your child's education, you can do that. That's your option. But they have to follow the protocols set forth by the school. Okay? So, as we go through this, students who choose this option during the COVID pandemic must commit to attend the parent choice remote learning option for at least 9 weeks. We cannot have people moving back and forth. You need to pick it. You need to stick with it. A lot of our area schools, 9 weeks seems to be the number that other schools are choosing as well. Okay? And you need to be sure your child has access to the internet. That's not on us. If you're going to choose remote parent choice, you got to get the internet. Okay? This on-site, on home remote choice puts an extra burden on our teachers, I can tell you. But we feel that we need to offer it. But we really would like to have most students on site with the rest of their classmates in a safe situation. Okay? Now, curriculum instruction is prepared, provided, and supervised by the school district. That's what's different from online. When you sign up with an online program, a couple things that are different. One, they're not hired by USD 211. Also, USD 211 doesn't get the tuition money. It goes to that company, and we lose that money. We don't get it. So if we have people that think they might want to do remote learning, we still want them to sign up with USD 211. It's teachers they know, and we also financially need those students, to be quite honest. So we want to keep them here. Plus, when things clear up or if they change their mind, we want them enrolling here. If it's after September 20th, they don't count financially. So that is a part of the concern. Okay? So, second thing, they'll be remotely taught by USD 211 teachers. This is a little different. This is definitely different from last spring. Students must maintain a daily log of activities signed by the student and parent or responsible adult and submitted to the district. Okay, so last year it was just kind of like, yeah, okay. You know, especially in a lot of districts, I think more so than in our district. Now, there'll be a log, and it puts down, you put down your time every day that you spend. Okay? So, were you going to go to the log? Or were you going to?
But it was on the PDF, not on this one.
Oh, okay, okay. But when we send that, we will be sending that out. It'll be at the end. When you get to look at the PDF, it's at the end of it. Will be the log. It's basically a chart, and you go across like you're signing a sheet for a lot of other things, and you there it is. It's like that, generally. What class they're in, total minutes they spent, the date. So you need one every day. Okay? They must log in 6 hours a day. Okay? So that's not spend an hour on it and then go play video games the rest of the day, like some people did in the spring, I think. 6 hours logged in. And so that's quite a bit different from what we saw before. Students engage in school online during regular school hours. Follow a schedule. Daily contact being made by staff by video conferencing. So staff has to check in. Some staff has to check in with that student every day. If it's an elementary student, then someone will check in with that student every day. Okay? Now, students will not be eligible to participate in extracurricular activities. We'll get to some of that stuff in a second in these other classes. Principals at your level, you might want to talk about a little bit how, because each one is different at each level. So you might talk about remote learning from each building's perspective, because it's different. Who wants to go first? Go ahead, Julie.
At the high school, we're planning on having the kids use Google Meet because it's part of Google Classroom, and it also has an automatic attendance tracker as part of an extension on that particular site. And so I have asked my teachers to put together their lesson plans using paperless as much as possible, so that they are going to be using Google Classroom to provide those homework or activities whether or not the child is in the classroom. So for some situations there may be a differentiation, such as biology. They're doing a lab. Mrs. Phillips may put together a flip video where they're going to be doing something different than what the lab would be in class. But the kids could log in and listen to the discussion, listen to the lecture, do things like that. And if it is an activity that they feel they need help with, they can stay online, and Mrs. Phillips or whoever the teacher may be can work with them as the teacher works throughout the room. But we are trying, for a variety of reasons, to go as paperless as we can and have everything on Google Classroom. Cross-contamination, being ready if we would happen to get shut down, we're ready to roll. The other thing we're doing is I am giving them, in lieu of faculty meetings are gonna become a Google Doc, and faculty meeting time is gonna be used to find those mastery objectives, so that we know what these kids must have in order to move on to the next level, what objectives they must have. And once we have that done, we are then gonna work on creating formative assessments so that we know where our kids are and when they're ready to move on to that next step. So my plan for that, because it's a lot of time, this remote option takes a lot of time. It's like doing 2 lesson plans a day. And the only way I know to give them that time is that in lieu of our faculty meetings, they'll be meeting during that time to work on these lessons, to align what we're doing, make those formative assessments so we know where our kids are and when they've mastered and ready to move on. Like for passion, that's our job. Our job's to educate. And we need to figure out where our kids are so that we can get that done. That's what we're doing at high school.
So is this a Zoom situation?
It's very much like Zoom, only it is, when you log into Google Classroom, it's right at the top of the screen. And so as long as the kids are in Google Classroom, they have it. It's right there.
So they have to be real time with the class they should be in
Yes.
anyway? Okay.
It'll be real time.
And it tracks that,
And
it
you
keeps
said-
track of that too, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
And you said there's 2 lesson plans. What if the class, if it's all paperless, wouldn't they have the same thing, but be like in the computer, the plans right, the work is there?
Yeah, they'll be able to label it as remote learning or in-class learning every day with the date.
But they'll do the same things?
Not if it's like a lab where we're dissecting a pig or using various chemicals. That's when there would be that second lesson plan. Otherwise, it will be the same activity. Did I answer that? Yeah.
Junior high is going to follow very much the same format. The teachers right now do not know a lot about Google Meet. It wasn't something we had available to us in the spring. If we were trying to do video conferencing, they were probably using Zoom versus Google Meet. Google Meet's been working over the summer too. Google's been working to make it better, and so it's nice that it's tied to the classroom. I could see where maybe assessment would have to be a little bit different on a few things since the kid is not there in the classroom. The other thing that I would say is one of the reasons why you have to do the daily log is just because you're logged in and we're taking attendance with the Google Meet. That's a nice help to know that the kid is there and participating. But there could be some things you need to do on your Chromebook that you may not be able to be involved in the Google Meet while you're also doing that on the Chromebook. For example, I think of Moby Max for junior high math classes. I don't know that you can be on Google Meet and also go do your Moby Max assignment. So it might be you tune in for 20 minutes, and then if you have to go do Moby Max, you're gonna have to log that then on the sheet so that we can get your 6 hours that day, kind of thing. So it's gonna be a work in progress, but I think that it's gonna help, one, our teachers, if we do have to go completely remote, this practice of maybe having some that do choose the parent choice remote will probably help them in the long run be able to reach all of them also. I'm gonna tell my teachers at the beginning, a lot of the focus at the beginning is going to be making for sure that we prepare the kids, whether they're in class or they're out of class, how to deal with if we have to go remote. We have to spend some time there because we didn't get that chance this spring. It was just gone. I know my teacher spent a lot of time just trying to teach a kid how to get on their email, how to do Zoom, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and we've kind of discussed this a little bit, that elementary is going to be, we're going to have to throw, the junior and senior high are going to have teacher direct to a student. And you're going to have age-appropriate kids that can probably do that, whereas I've got younger bodies in there that's going to have a mom and dad, a babysitter, or somebody at home helping with them in that respect. So that complicates my approach a little bit here. And the fact that to have that direct instruction during a first grade lesson is probably not quite as easy because as a junior high or a high school thing. So I'm almost going to have to look at putting a liaison person or a person who is going to have to work with the teachers and then provide instruction or contact with the students who are choosing this, and then they are going to then have to communicate back with the classroom teacher and with the parents. They're kind of going to be my go-in-between person. Now, it sounds complicated. I'm worried to death about it, but I'm still trying to work out some of the kinks to this. So, if I had 3 third graders who chose to remote learn at home, I would take those 3 third graders and put them with 1 third grade teacher, so that that person would be, that teacher would be the only one working that would have those third graders on their class roll or on their, in their program. That one teacher would be working with the person in the go-between. Okay, so not all 3 third grade teachers, because not all the third grade teachers are progressing at the same level, doing the same things during the year. So we're trying to minimize some of that confusion, you know, and stuff. But this is a work in progress, and I don't have all the answers that are just going to be perfect to start out with. I think we're going to have to make adjustments as we go. The 6 hours, that's going to be interesting. And I think we're going to have to communicate that to our parents, that 6 hours, we might provide an hour of that instruction maybe in the morning, and maybe we'll follow through with an hour in the afternoon, but then you have to pick up with your child to make sure that they are continuing with what is laid out for them. And so I think it's going to put a lot more pressure on moms and dads or caregivers or whoever at home for this. And so we're still working on it. And honestly, I got to be honest with you here, the people who I was looking at maybe providing that instruction to the students and working with the teachers would be maybe somebody who didn't feel comfortable being in a classroom at this point because of their own personal reasons, and yet they're still under contract, and you know, we need to make sure that they're, you know, and so who that person is still, or 2 or 3, depending on the numbers that we have, is what I had to work out, the mechanics of that.
Couple things. Also at the junior high and high school level, there are a couple of classes that remote learning just will not work. Okay, so like in the junior high Woods, and at the high school yearbook Woods Ag Mechanics, because those are hands-on in the building, and you can't remote teach those classes. So if you're going to do remote, you can't take those classes. Okay. Now another couple other things I want to point out with the log, we have to gather those logs to turn into the state. The auditor is going to pick those up, and so they're going to count around September 20th how many kids we have on remote learning, and that we have logs for those students and agreements with the parents for those students. But then you continue to keep the log through the year, because those count towards our final hours at the end of the year also. Even though at home, if you have 6 hours at home, does that equal to what they're getting at school during the day? No, your child's not getting the same amount of education. So that parents need to think about all those things when they think about remote learning. Okay? Now, I know this will be a big topic of discussion probably. What I can tell you about this is we spent a lot of time talking about this, visited with some staff about this, and looked at some surrounding area programs, and there was agreement that we felt like if you're going to be involved in an extracurricular activity, then you ought to be in regular at school. Okay? Because the remote learning is for people who feel a risk. Generally, if you feel a physical risk, you're probably not going to be in most of these activities, because these are activities where there's close contact, there's breathing on each other, things like that. So, and like I said, we checked with, I know I checked with some area schools, and they had the same policy. So I'm sure that'll come up for discussion later, but that's where that is right now. Now, our deadlines, we're going to send out a survey tomorrow, probably, morning, hopefully. At least tomorrow we'll get a survey out for parents and find out what kind of numbers we're looking at. How many are looking at sending their students to school, regular class? How many of them are considering a remote? Now that's not a final, they're not locked in on that from the survey. But when they do have to decide is they have to decide when they enroll. They enroll their student. When you enroll your student, then you've said you're going to do that for the first 9 weeks. Okay? We can't be jumping back and forth. Now, so there'll be a form to be filled out, and basically like a contract kind of a thing like you do with any online class. And then we'll just see as it goes. Will it be just first semester? I don't know. Will it be all year? More than likely a possibility, but it could change at semester. So we have to just go with how all this goes throughout this fall and this year. Now, anything else on that? Any principles, anyone? Okay. Now, our remote learning is when we have a case, we've visited with local health officials, and we've determined that it's best interest to either have classrooms that have to be shut down, or buildings that have to be shut down, or the whole district that has to be shut down. And usually the way that works is county health will call us, they'll call Angie or a principal, and they'll say, hey, you have X with a positive test and 15 kids that are under, and a teacher that's under quarantine, or maybe 3 teachers or whatever. And we have to get on the phone with each other and go, wow, what's that knock out? And then that's determined. We make contact with the public, parents, say these classes will not, you're on remote learning, you stay home, don't come to school. And that's when teachers have to switch over and go to remote learning. Literally be ready to do that overnight. So students need to take their Chromebooks home. You know, they need to be ready to do that. So,
Wilson,
yes.
how's this work with the new law that goes into effect tomorrow that people can opt out of the contact tracing?
I don't know. I don't do the contact tracing.
Hasn't been passed. It's already been passed.
Yeah, it goes into effect tomorrow.
Well, that will be.
That's up to the county health.
I just wondered since
Yeah.
if people can opt out, it just kind of leaves us in a hole.
That's another headache for county health, I'm guessing. Because we don't do it anyway. I mean, to some degree, Angie would help, but otherwise to figure out who's in what classes, and the principals to figure out who's in what classes, to figure out quarantines and such, but otherwise it's going to be county health's going to make the contact with the families, things like that. Okay? Now, so then all students will have the daily log, because if it's 2 weeks, let's say it's 2 weeks, and counting weekends, so you might get your 14 days of just quarantine time. Now, so then everyone has to keep the log during that time and turn it in. And it's still the same thing, 6 hours a day, logged, and the teachers will present the class in whatever format they can, whether it's elementary, junior high, or high school. And these students will also need to have access to the internet. Now, if some student's going to be out a period of time and we know it, and they're in a situation they can't afford the internet, that's probably where the district then would help work with someone to get the internet for them like we did in the spring. And I think we're going to be able to work with Next Tech and figure something out if that was necessary. So, because they've about had everyone hooked up last spring, so it wouldn't be too hard to go back and do that again, I wouldn't think. Okay? But that could get, because there's very few subs, and then you don't hire a sub to come in when the whole class is gone in quarantine anyway. So, and it can be very complicated, and teachers, if they're in quarantine and they're healthy, they may still be able to run their, especially at the secondary level, run their class from their home in quarantine. You know, most of the students, just because they're in quarantine, they're fine, so they can do their lessons. Now it becomes a different situation if someone is medically, you know, they're sick with it, they're in the hospital, things like that. That's a different situation. So, okay, some of our health protocols, and of course, visitors will need to consent to health screening protocols, and we'll have signs up on the entrances. If you come into a building, temperature will be taken, mask will be required, 6 foot distance from one another. Even with mask in the building, when you're in close, you just have, when you're in the building, you have mask on. Okay? Dropping off and picking up students, we're kind of working through those. The buses kind of got figured out. Parents coming in during the day, basically we have secure entry already, so we can allow parents in as we see fit and temp check. If we need to, they can wait outside till the child comes out. There's lots of ways to work with that in each building. So, but masks will be required, and including all visitors, all staff, everyone when they come in first thing in the day. Okay? Hand washing, of course, that's one of the things they pushed at the very beginning of this whole thing, is trying to wash your hands at least once every hour. Is that possible all day long? You're probably not going to ring the bell at every hour and go wash your hands, but teachers just have to make time for that to happen. And the best way still is soap and water. Still considered the best way. Hand sanitizers we will have in each classroom, other locations through the buildings. I was just at a Sparks meeting today with the county, and it's not really off topic, but New Age is making these that you can go and get in the big bottle and you can don't touch, and they're going to give every public space is going to have one in town. So we could have 3 or 4 of them, I don't know how many. So we'll have, you know, available in a hallway or in a public spot for people to use. Plus we have the small ones for the classrooms, and we have others. We've bought a lot of that in the last few weeks. So those will be available. This is probably the hardest thing. Social distancing in a building that's not made for social distancing. None of our buildings are. Okay? Minimum of 6 feet. Some classrooms may be able to do that. Most probably cannot do that. Now, that's going to be hard to stop in elementary. Okay? And some areas like the student lounge at the high school and such, there may be restrictions there because they tend to gather in groups there. Okay? Cleaning and disinfecting, those vary by building. Talk just a little bit about that, some things, and I'll talk about high school first, so be sure and jump in. Depending on age of students, they will be able to help us with some of this cleaning. And because in the secondary level, especially where they switch classes, you got different kids coming in the classroom 7 periods of the day or whatever. So we've already bought the buckets, but we have cleaner, and what they'll do is at the end of the hour, they will wipe off their desk. Like if they have a desk here, they will wipe that down in the last few minutes, 2 or 3 minutes of the hour. Then when they get up and they go out, the next class it should be dried off, and it's clean for that class. When that class gets done, they clean it off. Would that be correct, basically?
Yep.
And junior high 2 pretty much, and maybe even some of the upper grades of the elementary. But that works really great with older kids. With younger kids, not so much, although the younger kids probably tend to go back to a same desk throughout the day in the same classroom most of the time. Art rooms, things like that probably would have to be cleaned between classes coming in there. The high school kids and junior high kids, they're going through several different classrooms all day long. Anything else on classroom cleaning? Anyone? Okay. Because we have limited number of custodians, trying to get them in there. I mean, if the class is gone and they're gone to the playground, it might be a time that it can be cleaned a little bit. Those time schedules just have to be worked out. Water fountains will be closed. Fortunately, we already have several of these water baller fillers. That part will stay open. Kids will bring the water bottles, they can fill their water bottles. They'll have their individual water bottles. So that'll go on their list of things they need, just like pencils and things like that. We don't want sharing of anything. Pencils, notebooks, things like that. They have to have their own stuff. The water bottle's another, because water fountains, for obvious reasons, are not good. Okay, mask and face coverings. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the governor's order. Currently, it is still in effect. So, most everyone that I know of and talking today, they're following that order. The order says it starts August 10th, so we're not there yet, officially. Now, you can have, everyone must wear a mask, students, faculty, staff, visitors, with exceptions, must wear a mask. Persons with documented medical conditions, mental health condition, or disability that prevents them from wearing a face mask will be allowed to not wear a mask. So we need documentation that there's a reason they should not wear a mask. Some people have reasons they should not.
Was that in the executive order?
Yeah, it was.
What part of it?
The documentation?
Oh, no, that's.
Well, the documentation, we want documentation to see. Otherwise, I could have 25 kids say they can't wear a mask.
And we're not worrying about HIPAA or FERPA?
HIPAA doesn't apply.
HIPAA for telling them to wear a mask, unless they've got documentation which they can give to the school nurse, I would think, or we would have it in the records, whether it's special ed or whatever.
HIPAA doesn't apply because they're bringing you the information. Now, if we called the clinic and said, I want every student that has a mental health condition and they give it to us, HIPAA applies there. It doesn't apply when
So if
you
a
provide it.
parent doesn't want to supply the medical documentation for personal reasons.
And then what? And then they want them to not wear a mask?
Yeah.
I think they need to wear a mask.
I was just saying, how do we back that up?
Well, we say you can't wear a shirt with beers on it. So if you come in with a shirt that says Coors on it, we say go home and change. So if you come in and you don't have your mask on, we say here's a mask, we'll provide you one. You need to put it on. That would be my feeling. But that, I guess, could be up to the board if they want to accept this plan. So,
How about religious beliefs?
I don't think that's in there. I don't see it. So, we also, though, fully realize that no one can go all day wearing a mask. And so we want to allow time where kids, staff can be far enough apart where they can remove their mask and where their social distancing can be achieved and take them off for a little while. You can't wear the thing all day long. And especially whether it's younger or older, it doesn't really matter. We have to build in times in our schedules so that they can take them off for a few minutes. They may have to they're going to need more than one mask, possibly. If it's humid and warm and they've been moving around at all, they may want to switch and wear a dry mask, because a wet mask is no good. So, as long as we can physically distance, whether it's outside, if it's in the spring or fall, you can definitely go outside to spread out, or in the gym or some area where you can spread out, you can take them off for a little bit and then put them back on.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Are we going to have PE all year?
The plan right now is to have PE, yes. So if it's PE or weights and they're in it's vigorous activity, then they don't wear masks during that time. Am I understanding that's how you guys understand that?
How about band and vocal?
You guys have worked with them on plans for, I know there's a lot of planning going on as far as band and vocal. And the instructors have worked with their organizations on figuring out whether when masks are worn and staying 6 foot apart.
Yeah.
So,
There's certain things you can put like over the bell of the instruments to limit, all the drills in the air.
what about vocal?
There's special masks that are made that come away from your mouth a little more and allow the voice to exit the mask easier so that they can hear each other better and hear the different tones better. So we're looking into options like that.
And so, if we can get the 6 foot apart, do we allow the mask to be off at all?
You can have them off, but by the governor's order, I don't know that you still have to wear them if you're in the building, pretty much, I think. You can take them off and take a break probably, but the governor's order is more strict than what we were looking at with the plan from KSDE. The governor's order is more strict on masks. Because one, it's also lower grades. But it doesn't allow, it really doesn't allow as much leeway on taking them off. But it's our feeling you have to be able to take them off for a little bit of time and put them back on. But just because you can keep 6 foot, I'm not sure.
Well, it still says, while working, other than to prepare food or meals, in a room or office that is,
Yeah.
1, not open to students or visitors, and 2, in which all individuals present can maintain a 6 foot distance from individuals with only infrequent or incidental moments of closer proximity. So to me, that gives me the option of, if I happen to have a class that's smaller and I'm in a bigger room, we can take them off as long as we can all maintain our 6 feet distance.
That was my question.
And I agree with that, but I've heard it argued both ways by
That's the way I want to
KSD,
interpret it.
no less.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I
So
don't
every class, we know that all of our classes, we basically know all of our kids that will be there. How many classes will meet that criteria every time and how many won't?
I don't know hardly any that would be 6 foot apart in the classroom.
So what's the maximum capacity of most of our classrooms if 6 foot distancing is possible?
I don't know that we know that, but when I spoke to my staff on Monday, I encouraged them to stop thinking of their classroom as the only space that they can teach in and start looking at the building as a whole. And so start looking at things like the gym, start looking at things like the library, start looking at the cafeteria, start looking outside so that we can think outside that box. Because if we stay inside that box of the classroom, you're right, we don't have many spaces that would allow for this. But if we start looking at our building as a whole, I think we can be creative in coming up with times and places where they can take their masks off and socially distance. Will it be every class? Probably not, but I'm hoping it's the majority.
So what I'm hearing you say is you want to have the mask off if you can social distance? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
If we
I'm
can-
saying it's not practical though.
Yeah.
Because that's the reason, if everyone wears a mask, you don't have to be 6 feet apart all the time. That's why we need
Correct.
everyone to wear a mask. Because we do not have the space to keep everyone 6 feet apart. Like, what's probably your average class size, Mr. Roy, in each classroom?
Probably in the elementary, we're gonna be looking at 16 to 18 students per grade.
And those classrooms vary in size.
113 square feet just to have a 6 foot radius around the kid per one. So if you have 20 kids, you can do the math. It's a pretty large floor plan.
So I went into one elementary room and tried to measure it out, and I think I got like between 10 and 12 tops in that room. And that's taking everything else out. And part of our problem also too is that for the last few years we went away from individual desks and we went to group things. So a classroom will have like 8 desks, maybe 10 desks, and then they have tables for group work because that's what we had gone towards. And now we're saying you have to spread out again, and so it's going to take some work to figure out ways to set up to be spread out at all in the room. I mean, you want to get the maximum amount you can, and even with masks on, but I think that's going to be a challenge even then to do that. And I know at the high school they went to a lot of tables because one, it helped for like this, we're using this compared to a desk that's slanted and doesn't fall off, and so it's going to be difficult in that way for high school and junior high kids too. So I think we're trying to find a way to have breaks with masks off for a few minutes and then back on and back to work. I think that's what we're aiming at. What a mask is, because of course you got to have definitions. Ties, straps, loops over the ears, or simply wrapped around the lower face, so not real stringent. Should have a couple layers, cotton, silk, or linen. 2 or more layers. Can be factory made, homemade, improvised from household items. Mostly we're looking for 2 layers, school appropriate, probably these materials.
I was informed that another district's actually going to provide 2 masks per kid, and they're actually going to launder them at night, so you know the mask is clean and refreshed. Have you heard any of that?
I heard of a district was going to do that. It was quite a bit smaller than we are. But
I mean,
we can provide a mask, I guess, but I don't know when we're going to launder them.
and laundered at night.
Well, we don't have anyone on staff working at night.
Yet.
Okay.
I mean, you think about it, there's some issues there about how do you know that mask is clean? You know what I'm saying? Or refreshed. It could be a problem.
Okay. Health screens, temperature checks required upon entering the building for the first time of the day. So the first time they come in the day. All right. So obviously the first thing they check is the fever. If they have a fever, 100.4. And Angie, if they hit that, they'd probably check them a second time then, wouldn't they? Okay.
Actually, our policy is that they're 100.0.
Anyway.
They go home anyway, so it's more indicative of the COVID if it's 100.4.
Because if you're running a fever already, then
Yeah.
for flu or whatever, we've sent you home. These others are basically the questions you ask, or you have a list of these questions and they say, if they're older, they can say, I do not have any of these symptoms. For younger, it's a little more difficult. Then if a student does show up ill, they're isolated, picked up by parent or guardian. If they're going to run a temperature, we're going to have our nurse look at them and visit with them and get more detail about how they actually feel to make sure we don't see the symptoms that we need to recommend that student, the parents take that student to the doctor. Okay? Older kids, we can send them home immediately because sometimes we have parents that are working, they're not here. So we have to isolate that kid until someone can come get him, or if they get permission, we can send that student home. Staff students who have a fever and exhibit multiple symptoms may be recommended to see a physician. So, definitely so. And then to come back, you have to be free of a temperature without medication for 72 hours.
Are they gonna need a doctor's note?
Come back from the kitchen.
What I'm planning on doing is, I have thought over and over how to do this, because every kid will come down with a headache, so I'm gonna ask them, investigate what's going on, how is this more intense than your regular headaches, or your regular sore throats. So, I've thought a lot about that, how I'm gonna do with that, and I'll probably change in my mind constantly till the first day of school. But I cannot diagnose, it's out of my scope of practice, so I can report, I'm gonna ask them to contact their provider, because maybe it's strep, maybe it's influenza, maybe it's something else. And then they can decide whether, okay, we need to test, or maybe you need to stay home for a while, 72 hours or more, whatever they decide. It'd be nice to have a note. I don't think I'm gonna get a note all the time, but it would be nice. And that's something we'll probably figure out with the local health department more as we get closer. That's the plan in my head right now.
So if a kid doesn't feel well, he has a fever, he goes home.
Right.
He's home the next day, bouncing off the walls, everything's perfectly fine. Can that kid go back to school, or do they gotta wait the 72?
72 hours.
So 72 hours.
Or if that changes, if it's longer, then we'll figure that out too.
Okay. At what point do we require a doctor's note to come back to school?
That will be probably decided between the health department and myself, or us. Get the health department more involved with that, depending on the diagnosis too.
If a kid doesn't go to the doctor though, they just, well, you know, Nate,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
gets headaches,
Yes.
he gets bad
He's
headaches.
one I've been thinking of.
He goes home, okay, he's home for 72 hours, there was no need to go to the doctor, and we want to put him back in school. I'm curious, because if we need a doctor's note to not wear a mask, are we going to need a doctor's note
Right.
to return them to school?
I think the deciding factor there is fever though. If it's just a headache and it doesn't have a fever, right, you can come back the next day. If it's fever, then you do have to do the 72 hours because that's when you're like shedding virus.
Right. Still, on coming back to school, if we have to have a note to not wear a mask,
So you're saying he does present fever with a headache?
Those aren't the
Yes.
same thing though. Because you're asking permission to never wear a mask all year or all whatever. And this is 72 hours with a fever is not the same thing as not wanting to wear a mask at all and follow the rules of the school. Those are not the same thing.
if somebody shows symptoms and they're sent home,
But we don't know what symptoms of COVID. We just know that they have a fever.
I think if
Unless
it's a fever,
she
you're
sees
not back
multiple
for 72
symptoms,
hours, no matter what.
unless she sees multiple symptoms that were listed there that show COVID, she would report it.
The clinic has told me to mainly look for like 2 or 3 of the main symptoms. But what Dustin's bringing up is these guidelines, return to school after exclusion. If a person decides not to go to the doctor, if they decide with a provider to, they don't need to be tested or whatever, they're saying 10 calendar days have passed and fever-free 72 hours, whichever criteria is longer. Because the communicability period for what they're saying is 10 days.
okay, so that's if you see 2 or 3 symptoms,
Yes.
they're out for 10 days, minimum.
If they don't get tested.
If it's untested, yeah.
Because I know someone that had several of the symptoms, and the first thing they tested them for was flu and not COVID, even though the symptoms were very similar, and they had influenza B. So if they tested negative for that, they probably would have tested them for COVID, because the symptoms were similar. But that's up to the doctor. They went to the doctor. In this case, this is saying they don't have the test and then,
And I
10
understand not
days.
every parent's gonna I don't take my kids to the doctor all the time.
Right.
So, yeah, I get what you're saying. So
Well, I
this
was
will be.
just, we're going to want to be abundantly clear
Yes.
with all the parents that
Yes,
if they're sent home with a fever, and I have seen 2 symptoms,
yes,
they're not out for 3 days, they're out for 10 days minimum.
yep. Because influenza last year, we were out for 5 days minimum, 24 hours fever free. And now they're saying 10 days. That's what I've been losing sleep over. So,
I read into a bunch and
Yeah.
I
And that's
just,
something I want to, try to get a hold of Dr. Mallard too. And I know she's gone, but I really need to
That's also something that you're finding that it's an evolving situation right now with
Yes.
what the recommendations are.
Yes.
You know, so I could see some schools just saying, if the kid is presenting any kind of symptoms that could possibly be there, you're out the 10 days.
Yes.
Especially if you're not going to get tested. Okay, if you're going to get tested and it comes back negative, you know, they have guidelines here. I don't know that we've gotten down into the weeds yet exactly how we want to do that because it keeps evolving and changing with what's going on. So
Because it says the recommendations of KDHE for the local health department.
Because if you go on 10 days, then you go on remote learning. So that just switches you to remote learning during that 10 days. So you would still get your schoolwork,
Yeah.
still log your time. Unless you're really sick, obviously.
Yeah.
But you'd be able to return back to school, right? That's not, if they go to remote learning for 10 days,
Yeah,
that's
then
not,
they can
that's
come.
not their choice.
No, that's the school remote, yeah, not a parent remote choice.
But if you decide to get tested and it's negative, you wait 3 days or however long it's negative, you can come back.
Right.
here's that part. Unknown exposure to a COVID-19 case or travel-related exposure, so you can come back on
Yeah.
negative. Then they're saying you can return.
And that's another thing too, is people will have to think of over Christmas. Thanksgiving, Christmas, and spring break is where you go. If you go somewhere, let's say South Texas or somewhere in Florida, you're going to catch 14-day quarantine from the health department. So be careful where you take your vacations, I guess.
Are we ready to go now?
And of course, another thing, we obviously ask parents to check their kids before they send them to school, and keep them at home if they think they're ill, whether it's COVID, flu, whatever kind of sickness that they have. Okay? Some of our operations, food service, we're still working through these and still getting guidance on food service. It will be different than the spring. Remember, we had the free meals for everyone this last spring. That's not happening now. Obviously, students at school, it'll be like it always is. You will get your meals at school. You'll be charged, whether it's full price or partial or free lunch if you qualify. But also, if you're doing at-home learning, parent requested, you can qualify for meals. But you'll have to come get the meals, and you will be charged the amount, whether it's full price, partial, or free. So some of the other things with meals, students will wear their masks, face coverings, and maintain distancing while in the serving line, and obviously when they sit down to eat, they take the mask off. We may have to expand some times just because it's going to take longer to get through the lines. We may expand where their seating is going to be so they can spread out. And we'll follow guidelines. Food service, still working on some of theirs for this. So we have bought shields for like the elementary lunchroom where they put out the plates, they'll slide through underneath so that they're not breathing either way onto the meals or someone else's plate. That will take longer to spread them out and go slower. So that's going to take some work. Principals, anything on lunchrooms and meals?
Well, at the junior high and high school, and typically there might be a big tub of peaches and you can get your own peaches and stuff. So there'll be no student self-serving themselves. So it might take a little bit longer to get through the line because you're going to have to say, yes, I want that, yes, I want that, as they serve you. So that'll be a difference for the kids.
One thing.
We're still thinking about doing the self-serve salad bar.
Yeah.
But the students will all have their own tongs.
Yeah, this is crazy, but this is what we're gonna do. So salad bar, because some students, salad bar is a big deal, and they've always just taken and got their own. Well, then they handle the tongs. We ordered 100 sets of tongs, $1.50 a piece or something like that. And so what they'll do is take the tongs with them down through the line, they'll get their salad, they'll put them in a bowl or whatever, and go on. Each student will, and then they'll take them back and they'll heat them up, wash them, and they'll be good to go the next day. So that's how we, so they have a little bit of freedom on salad. Most everything else is gonna have to be served for them, they can't get it out themselves.
So you telling me we're gonna set them 6 feet apart, nobody across?
We're trying, which is why I'm looking at possibly the art room, possibly Kelly Perez's room, possibly the band room, so that we can spread kids out. But we are going to give it a try, yes.
And Craig at the Eisenhower, I've had the tables laid out different ways. I think I can put them every 6 feet on one side. And I think I can get up to 55 students in there at one time. Normally we have 110 or so, 100 to 110 because we have 2 grades eating. We're only going to be able to have 1 grade eating at a time in the cafeteria. The other grade that normally would be in there will have to go to their classrooms, and we'll have to provide supervision for those kids in the classrooms while the teachers get their lunch. So we're making some adjustments with that and stuff. So 6 feet apart, nobody across from you. We probably won't be able to have parents come and eat with them, you know, because that we're going to be tight with our numbers and stuff. So I think this has created a big challenge for us, but I think we've all come up with a doable plan, if you will, for that. And probably the best thing for us is having those shield guards up there when those little guys go up there and they sneeze all over their tray and everybody else's tray that's in line there and stuff. So, and you laugh, but it happens. So, anyways.
On transportation, students and staff transported in the vehicles will be required to wear a mask or face coverings, and which is masks basically. But this is because you can't keep 6 feet apart on a bus route or an activity bus. You have to be, you're going to be in close together, and there's no way around that. So they'll wear their mask on the bus. Or in a van, if there's several in the van, they're going on somewhere on a trip, they have to wear their mask. Now, we'll try to maintain separation as much as possible, and we try to keep them in family groups or household groups because that's who you're living with anyway. Of course, we talked about, well, except they beat up on each other, so that's a problem. But still, we'll figure out matching kids up and try to keep them with their own family group. Seating assignments, we've had that before anyway, so that will possibly come into effect. We'll try, when possible, to leave the seat behind the driver open, because the school bus people are really picky. And so you'd say, well, why don't you put up a big screen behind there? Well, they won't let you screw anything into a bus because it changes the bus. So you can't put like a piece of plexiglass right behind the driver so they can't sneeze down his back. So what we'll try to do is keep that seat open as much as possible. Drivers wear a mask, but if they're like me and they have glasses and they wear a mask, we don't want them fogging up their glasses and their drivers. So if they need to wear their glasses to drive, then they won't wear a mask because we need them to see. They'll wipe down the vehicles after every route, and then they'll get thoroughly cleaned once a day. So that means we'll like go through with a vacuum and then use the sprayer, the fogger, and fog it down and wipe down. But they'll wipe it down for sure, the seats, after every trip. So they come in the morning, they wipe them down. Well, that's not quite right. I think that's when they're going to clean them, but then they'll go back out that night and they'll come back the next morning, go again. So they've been cleaned, but wiped down after every trip, cleaned thoroughly every day. Anything else on any of that? Principles? So that's where we're at right now. We still have a lot to, things we're probably missing. And as we work with staff and work through this, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the first day of in-service. That morning time we usually spend on a lot of things. We will spend on protocols of start of the school day, how we start, what lunch is going to look like in different buildings with the principals, just going through safety protocols with Angie, and I think the county health nurse will be there and answer questions that staff have. And like I said, it could change between now and August 17th. So this thing is ongoing. They told us today, like they had the document from KSDE. Well, they made a couple of changes in that document just today. So people were freaking out because they'd written their plans already. Well, that document had changed that they'd taken the plans off of. So these documents will have to be flexible. And so when there's changes, we have to let people know this has changed. So we'll have to have patience by everyone and be able to roll with it.
I have a couple more questions. What do we, if a student shows up habitually without a mask? I see this probably more in the younger ones, that the parents don't check a backpack, but I'm sure this is going to be an issue for all the ages at one time or another.
Well, I think, Jamie, if it's in my building, we'll catch them and we have disposable masks that we've purchased. We'll put them on.
Okay.
And it'll be a communication thing back with us to the parent as best we can to say, you know, make sure you check. I mean, kids forget their shoes too sometimes. And stuff. So we understand that because sometimes, unfortunately, Jamie, we have sometimes 7 and 8 year olds that are getting themselves to school, and that's important. And if they forget their mask, we'll work with them.
We have over 1,000, like those that are on the music stand. We have over 1,000 of those, so we can handle one. The school will probably start, kind of like when someone forgets their coat, we kind of keep a spare at school for them in case they forget it when they get there. So.
Okay, and my question on religious beliefs. It's going to come up.
Aren't immunizations religious beliefs too?
Yep.
Do we require immunizations to go to school?
Do they have to be for any school activity?
For a public school, do we require immunizations to go to school?
Yes.
I believe so.
Aren't they a religious belief?
My guess.
Or what's the difference?
Okay, I just wondered what stance we were taking on it.
We already have it in that, and there are religious beliefs that don't believe in it. So I don't see how this is going to be taken any different.
Okay.
Mr. Wilson, I didn't hear, I'm curious if you guys talked about this, thinking ahead that we have an outbreak and we have to shut down. Have we thought about, so we have our kids in blocks, you know, so we could just lose like 1 grade or 2? You know, have you guys had any discussion that way? Just always have, you know, 60 kids always together, and not crossover?
At the secondary level, we do not. I mean, we decided to stick with the regular schedule that we have in high school.
Well, easier at the grade school.
Yeah,
I'm
at
sure.
the grade school. So they would, I mean, you could have a kid, quite honestly, come in first hour, spreads it for 7 class periods, have no symptoms till later, and hit 150 of the 200 high school kids. I mean, that's just a fact. Now, at junior high, still, you mix quite a bit. Elementary, I think Mr. Roy can kind of speak to that because I know he kind of does, I believe. in
Well,
some
our
ways.
5th and 6th graders, they switch classrooms,
Yeah.
but not switch kids, if that makes sense. The classrooms go around. I've asked the 5th and 6th grade teachers, and it's split 50-50. Like so many things in that respect, you know, do we move rotate the teachers or rotate the classes, and that split. So, but we're pretty much great self-contained in the classrooms and stuff. Does that make sense?
It was like your P, was it PE
The
or what did you
PE
have?
and the
Yeah.
music is the exception to that rule. And I'm split on how I want to proceed with that. But what we will find will be recess. kids go outside. The issue is they're outside, and there's a better chance for them to be apart unless they're playing a game or something like that. Recess is where kids could be within each other. But they're usually just one grade out there, maybe two grades, but that's where I'm at.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the definition to be quarantined is if you are within 6 feet for 10 minutes or longer. Is that gonna be the
That's
one
my
we follow?
understanding.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of interactions that are 3 minutes and 4 foot, so are we gonna not, you know what I'm saying? I would think we would wanna be, you know, not quarantine too many people, because otherwise you're gonna have the whole school. If you have that kid, the example you just said, that's the whole school, and that doesn't
Who
make sense.
quarantines isn't our choice.
But that's the definition of quarantine.
Yes, it is, but that's not our choice. Who quarantines and who doesn't.
Okay, but they're gonna ask our nurse or that teacher who should be quarantined. Follow me? I mean, we're gonna be involved in that
Yes.
decision.
Yeah, and it can be, I mean, it's gonna be hard to tell when a student, I mean, you may sit across from a student in a class, you were that 1 hour is the only hour you have with that student. And if I tell Leslie that, hey, I was in that room, but we were never more than 20 feet apart, then that student, I don't know, it'll be up to her whether she'll say that student be
In this
quarantined.
particular
But
case,
in my discussions with her, she's always been, I mean, you know, she's followed it, but she's not been like, you know, right on you on it. I think she'd be reasonable on this. I see what you're saying, but she would tell us that's, because I don't know who will interview
But the
the individual
investigation's
kids,
gonna be
or
the
how,
teacher.
or will that be us interviewing the kids?
Well, there may not even be an investigation with the new law. That kid tests positive, he goes in, he tests positive, the parents say, we're not releasing any information. They can't tell anybody in the general public that so-and-so tested positive, and at that point, if the parents decide not to release any direct contacts, that's how it is.
Well, then we've failed, haven't we? Have we not failed?
Have we failed? I
Yeah.
think that law is crazy.
Yeah. I mean,
I
is it a law?
yeah,
Or-
it's.
Because no one's, a state,
It's-
what law? Who is it?
It just went through the state.
But they're not in session. There's no legislature in session right now.
Passed June 5th. It's to protect people's privacy.
So all this time it's been in effect? Oh, it said, but they said the date starts.
August.
August 1st.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
So that's a whole new,
well, there you just operate under what you can and go on down the road.
Yeah, I mean, that's not anything we can control.
I mean, if they come in and they infect 15 other people, I guess we're shut down. Because
I think
it is out of our
even if they
control.
didn't have a waiver, you know, signed, I think we'll do the best we can to not be, you know, you're not gonna put it out on Twitter, you know, Jimmy came down with whatever. The staff may have to know some things. They're gonna be asked questions about where the kid was at and the kid's movements, but it's not something.
That's
But
if
what
the
he's
parents
saying is,
decide to
he's saying
release
the
that.
parents say right off the bat they're not gonna do it. Yeah.
The parents don't have to release it.
You're
We
saying
know
we'll
what it
never,
is.
you're saying we'll never know?
We're saying it'll be illegal for them to release their name or anything. We'll have a general idea, but there won't
Then
be.
they might be able to shut down everything everywhere, I would suppose.
I was,
I guess.
If the parents opt out of it.
But it's still, will it get reported to county health though if it's a positive case?
Yes, yes.
So county health will know, I mean, they won't name the person, but they say, someone in Norton High School's got it, shut it down? I don't know. That'd be something less.
And then once that parent contacts you and says, hey, my kid needs a remote, you'll know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to know.
But Craig, to go back to your question, the teachers themselves, every day, it's gonna be a nightmare for them to know where they are in the proximity of every kid, every hour. And we kind of talked about it briefly, you know, are they 6 feet away during the 50-minute lesson or 40-minute, or were they, and the teachers are gonna have to know know that. And unfortunately, that's gonna take up part of their instruction. You know what I'm saying? That's a challenge, and it's not a good one, that they're gonna have to know in case they have to be interviewed on the, you know, the distance that they've had with that child or whatever.
That's what I like about Julie's though, is let's look at classrooms where we have the 6 foot, and it's really not even technically an issue.
Well, and I think all the teachers are looking at options of outside or alternative rooms and places in the hallway and breaking out, you know, in different segments and stuff. We have to be careful because you still have to provide supervision. You can't say, take those 3 kids and go down in that room and you guys work, you know, because you still have to have supervision. And so that becomes an issue too with that and stuff. So, yeah, I think every teacher in our district is looking outside of that box that they've been in for so long. And they really do a pretty good job of thinking, okay, how can I get 6 feet, the social distance appropriate, give them 10 minutes without a mask and with these kids, and the other kids are out doing something with somebody. I think they're working on that and stuff to try to maintain safety for themselves and for their kids, but yet to also work in those groups that are going to be very rich.
Any more discussion with the board?
Could I ask one question? that
That-
hasn't came up?
Yeah, just a second, Mr. Johnson. Anybody else on board? Okay, and that's why I asked the teachers and our staff to wait until we were done so you could see the plan. And now we're gonna open it up for them too. If you have questions.
I wasn't able to make the first excuse me, Zoom faculty meeting, but it hasn't been discussed here, face coverings. Does a face shield, is it appropriate for educators, for us teachers, if we're lecturing, as opposed to a mask? By KDH. I haven't heard that.
My understanding is that the shield by itself is not, that you have to have a mask. And then if you want to wear a shield, you can, but the shield by itself is not because it's too far out. That's my understanding. Is that right, Angie?
If you're in front of the room, can you be 6 feet away?
Yeah.
Then you wouldn't have to provide a
That's-
shield.
Another thing, like Coach is saying, when they're speaking in front of the class and doing a lecture, we hope they can get that far away, because if you have hearing impaired or problems like that, you can't understand. We realize you can't understand through the mask. So that's a concern. That could be a concern.
I'm assuming we're gonna lecture with no mask.
Well, I mean, that's what we're kind of clarifying, I think.
Yeah,
As long as we can stay,
I just kind of like
Hard.
to walk around.
yeah, that'll be a.
That's gonna have to change.
Then when you have, like, to go help students, you're gonna
Right.
put your mask on, go look over their shoulder, whatever. It's gonna be, get used to the habit of doing it, yeah.
Ladies?
Just here to listen and support. I do have a question. Once the parents decide that they want to do the parent choice remote, how are we going to make sure those parents understand what's all involved? And that it's not just like last spring?
Okay, I'm gonna have them help me with this after I say this, so I'm gonna speak for myself first. But I think when they come to enrollment to make that decision, we will have to lay that out. Say, okay, this is what you have to do, and go through it. And I know, like Mr. Miller worked on some things that compared, you know, on a table, so it's kind of easier to see, because it can get kind of confusing. But to say, this is what you're responsible for doing, because one, your child won't get credit, and two, we won't get credit for your child. So these things must be done. And it's not like signing a band sheet that my kid practiced, even though I know they didn't practice. I mean, if you care about your kid, I would hope that you want them to get an education. So if you're gonna keep them at home, you got a lot of responsibility if you're gonna do that.
And I think, Ms. Schultz, that's got to be up to that'll be, for the Eisenhower, that'll be my responsibility to communicate that the method of how that is happening is, I don't have that answer right now, but it'll have to be my responsibility to communicate to those parents what that is. The method of, or the timing of that, Mr. Wilson said, at enrollment, they have to make that decision. The survey's supposed to go out. That's the whole thing, and I told this group here, I know there's people that want to know the remote learning. Now that the plan is being developed, it's out there. Now we can talk more about how we're going to implement it. But to answer your question, I think it's the timing that has to, because parents need to know, now that they see the plan, we need to tell them, explain it, and then they need to let us know so that then we can make the plans of who's going to be doing what. And so I honestly thought at some point maybe I need to have a sit down, an open meeting with parents that are interested in knowing about it. I don't know if these two are going to do it, but I'm thinking of throwing that out as an idea, saying if you're interested in hearing about it, come to a meeting. And I think that would probably be a good way, but nothing like that until after the plan.
No, that's fine. And I
We're
think that sounds
hoping,
like a
yeah,
good
we're
idea.
hoping our survey will give us some ideas so that, because we'll have the plan, if I can run the technology, we'll have the plan attached to it and then the survey, and then by Wednesday we'll have results. And the parents can say they're interested in which one. So if we see that suddenly we have like 35 in one level that's interested in this, then it's going to be, okay, we need to plan this way. If we have 5, we still plan, but it could be different. But if we get a large number planning remote, then staffing and switching staffing around will be critical. But they have to be sure they understand that you're in it for 9 weeks and then all the things that are involved with that. That's the important thing. That they understand before they sign up what they're signing up for.
I have a quick question. I know a lot of us elementary teachers are looking into like barrier, plexiglass or the shower curtain over the PVC pipe. Just to clarify, if we do have something like that, we still need to have our masks on if they're not going to be 6 feet apart.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Because I was just trying to figure out how to do reading groups with kindergartners.
I see what you're saying.
Because it's going to be, we have the table, and if I can have dividers, but they'll still need their masks.
They still need the mask.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the way it's
Okay.
been given to us. That's how it has to be.
And then this plan's going to go out tomorrow then to.
This plan will go
Like
out
the survey?
on the survey. So it'll be, you can click on it and open a PDF of the plan and have it to look at. And then, or probably copy over what they want to, or when they do the survey and they send it back, it'll still be there, I guess, won't it?
I figured it would also be posted on our website.
And we'll put it
somewhere as
on,
well.
we'll have it on the website since it's been discussed at the board. We'll put it out on the website.
Excuse me for a second, back to her question. Why? I mean, these kids will be sitting, it's a 6-foot barrier.
They're
And
not
So they would be 6 feet apart. Like I'm talking like
it'd be like being in a
plexiglass.
room with a window.
That's just not how it's
That's
presented
just,
to,
yeah.
we're supposed to follow.
The rules said
Oh.
that they have to be a mask.
We're talking about. I would really love for you guys, if I had a choice, everybody be 6 foot apart all day and not wear masks. That's how I feel. Get out of care.
It's
And
just
that would be
It's
the
not
best
possible.
society.
Yeah, that would be
Great.
I'd love to have a school that big.
I'd love to
We're
do
not
that too.
thinking-
I'm
we
just
can
trying
think
to
harder
keep
out
them
the
kindergarten
box.
study with them.
So is it going out as it's shown here tonight, or will there be more details? I worry that maybe there's not I worry you're gonna get more questions.
Possibly. But the more detail, then if you have to change it. I mean, if you put too much detail in right now at this stage, then, and then we change it, then it's really confusing. You know what I'm saying? Right now, it's a draft because it is still pretty flexible because we're still about 3 weeks out. So like, if we bring back a final at the August board meeting, it might have more detail by that time. It may not. they're only gonna have so much detail because each building is different. It's a district-wide operations, and each building's gonna be different. So each building's gonna have a little bit different kind of rules. For example, like temp check. Like at the elementary, they may do it, set it up one way, and at the junior high and high school, it may be different. So we didn't put all those details
On your
yet.
final draft, do you foresee doing that?
I don't know that we'll put those in there.
Like, I've talked to, my staff, we had a Zoom meeting, we've talked through some of the ideas of saying, okay, a kid shows up. In the past, they've gone to the cafeteria. Everybody's hugging on each other, everybody's sharing this, sharing that, and it's just, and that's not gonna be okay now, I don't know that our back to school plan is gonna show every detail of what my staff is going to go through on a daily basis, Because you talk about temperature checks. Who exactly is gonna do those temperature checks? I don't know that that's gonna be in my plan at any point in time, but it'll be something we've thought through, Because at one point in time I'm thinking this way, another time I'm thinking this way. I'm thinking, well, maybe they'll have to go to their first hour class. Maybe they'll go to the gym. Well, if they go to the gym, if they have their mask on, are they going to sit by each other, or are you going to make them social distance when they get to the gym? Because you probably have room if some of them are in their class, So I don't know that we can get into the weeds and that far down there, Which room are we going to use for sure for extra people at lunch? I think it's going to have to stay general. I think if there's some things that the board thinks needs to be in there, that's not, that we can add stuff in before an August meeting.
One thing is, like I said, temp checks, because that could vary quite a bit per building as how they're gonna do those, so. And we've talked about them, and that's something that changed from the plan that KSDE sent out to us, was like you could take them to the classroom and then check their temps. And it's like, whoa, you got them inside already, and then you got one with a temperature, So now it's before they enter the building, which makes sense. But if you're Wichita North and you got 3,000 kids, it's a lot of entries.
Or if it's 0 degrees.
Yeah. So they're going to have to buy those big ones they walk through one at a time, and then you got to be sure you don't tell the world what their temperature is.
Do you have something in particular that you feel really needs clarified before we go out to staff the first time? Before it goes out the first time?
Oh, I mean, yes,
Sitting here and hearing it all has been,
it's great, and I,
That's kind of how,
all
and
told me it's a
that's kind of
draft,
how
and
it is. And when we hear it from the state, I feel you, because I understand. It's like, and then they tell you the next day something they didn't tell you last week. And
but you're
it's
also
pretty
sitting here,
frustrating.
you're sitting here as a staff member.
right, well, as a mom too, that's partly why, but, I've got two with you guys, I'm not teaching my, you know what I mean? Like, I've got two in the high school, so as a mom, I came wondering what was going on too. And if you're prepared to, like when it goes out, if they call the offices and you guys are, with questions they have.
Especially if we get like questions on the same thing from several people, we know that that's not clear.
Right.
And we need to clarify that. That's
Is your survey
kinda how
going to
that
have
works.
a comment field that?
I don't think we had a comment field on this one. We were trying to just get the numbers on stay at home, remote, and come to school.
And the one thing I would say to that is, if we get too detailed, you're tying my hands, and I can't deal with individual cases. I can't take this special case here and do this, and take that special case there and do something different, because our plan says I have to do X, Y, or Z. And so I like the generality because it allows me to do my job better, if that makes sense.
Well, I'll go on the record, if we don't do temp checks before they enter the building, we don't do temp checks,
Yeah.
because that was a worthless.
Yeah, you're right. I think the thing that runs into temp checks is a kid ran 3 blocks down the street and then walks in. We have that happen too. And then, or if it's the middle of the winter, then we probably have to check them and then recheck them. But yeah, coming in the building makes sense.
Or if we have a day where, what if it's this morning's rain happened while they're coming to school, I think we're gonna have some alternative plans. This is the best alternative. Maybe it's, you're in the gym and you're lined up until we can check you and you go somewhere else. those things are gonna.
We're still looking at
that's
several
gonna happen.
different things
I thought
on
about that this morning
staffing
when I was
those and
in my
everything.
office and it started raining, I'm like, ugh.
But I'm just saying that the first
Yeah.
comment was put them in the room, then check them.
That was, well, that was kind of the idea.
He's original.
Yeah.
That was kind of the idea, and it's like, oh, that's not a very good idea.
Dustin, just to be clear, I like everything you have. There were just, I don't remember what was up there right now. I'm trying to compare my notes to that. Like, Mr. Wilson was very clear about it, saying you have to provide your own internet,
But it wasn't in
clear
here,
in
was
there.
it? Yeah, that's true.
Just little things like that,
That's true.
not procedural things,
That's true.
so.
I think, I had talked to Dustin, I think, and maybe like an example for the parent choice, like, for an example, if Johnny has science at 9 a.m., he is meeting with the instructor and his class at 9 a.m. for attendance. As an example to parents, so like, okay, this is what it looks like. It's not that he can come and watch a video.
But that would be at one level, but not at the elementary level.
Yes, yeah, but
So
we're-
that's why we'd have to have like 3 or 4.
Yeah, but it says 7 through 12.
Yeah, okay, I got you, yeah.
I just think that that would allow them a little bit more of an understanding
Yeah.
of what this looks like, and maybe decrease the questions.
Yeah.
One thing, did we clarify in there that parents are required to buy their kids' masks, to purchase their kids' masks?
No, I don't think it
We
says that
probably
in
need
there.
to clarify that.
Because we will,
Buy 'em.
we will have masks,
Wash them.
we will have masks, but even if we bought everyone, we'd probably buy them one, and they need more than one.
I mean, we bought them tongs. We could probably buy them.
We bought 100 tongs, not 700 tongs.
Not one for every person.
But we can buy a mask for everyone, that's not a problem, but they need more than one mask. So they're still gonna have to buy a mask.
We can go a little deep.
I bought 4 for each
So,
kid.
would it be a good idea to send this to the staff before sending it to parents?
We kind of need to know, don't we?
I think that's a great idea.
I think giving them time to digest it, because when it gets out there, they're getting immediate questions. If they haven't had time to look at it, then we kind of look like, I mean, I don't like putting them in that position, I guess, to answer questions when they haven't had a chance to digest it. and
I
look at
thought
it.
the staff has been kind of consulted each building.
Well, not all staff though.
Yeah, it's
Have
not-
we sent this out at all?
They have a lot of questions.
We sent out the KSDE, which most of this is based on, so I don't know that anyone's gonna get ambushed.
But do you think
This
if-
pretty much follows KSDE's.
Do you think if we waited till Monday to send out the survey, got it to the staff tomorrow, gave them the weekend to digest it, and be prepared for questions?
Are we gonna change it?
Monday? I don't think we change it. But at
We-
least they have an idea and an understanding of what's in it.
Yeah, we'll wanna turn around the survey pretty fast, so that
Right.
means like Monday to
And-
Wednesday if we do
right.
that, because,
And that's the thing, we have the time crunch. We have got to get something
I'll have to
ready.
double check too, because I don't think it automatically, will it automatically close? He'll be back, I guess, Keith will. I had, because I had to go from Friday to Tuesday, but we can.
I even don't mind if you put it out tomorrow morning to staff and like 5 p.m.
And do a quick
We'll
turnaround.
do it 5, okay, yeah.
Like, I don't mind that, but they
I
can
just
come
want
and
to
take
get
Is that long enough for you guys to get it digested?
Yes, I think your secondary counselors really want to know, and I think your secondary teachers really want to know how many students are doing virtual, and they need to be making class
Right.
schedules, and
Right,
I think that's huge.
yeah.
But how is it, as a parent of, or as a foster parent of an asthmatic kid, and you may have a lot of other parents out there trying to make an educated decision. Do I send my kid to school or do they stay at home? And I don't know if that reading this, they can make an educated guess on that. We have the best forensics department in the nation here in Norton, Kansas. We have a lot of teachers that I saw made some really cool TikTok videos or whatever those were called during the quarantine. We could actually role play, and this just hit me, I'm sorry, this is thinking outside the box here, but if they could put together what it's really gonna look like, because I think some of the parents are thinking, hey, we stay at home, I'm just gonna keep my kids at home, and they'll do exactly what they did last spring. Well, what's that gonna look like? Do they know? And it looks so much different at the lower elementary, the upper elementary, the junior high, and at the high school. So we either gonna have to have some sort of meetings to explain this, and when you have those meetings, they tend to get too big and too much conversation. But if we could maybe put out what it's gonna look like, that would help. I think that would help a lot for some of these parents.
How hard is it to do like just a recorded video of Dustin or Julie with this saying, this is what it looks like?
Reading it to them or what?
We've got one.
At this point.
We just did it tonight.
Yeah, there you go, right.
I'm talking about like walking into the building. This is what, when you show up at school at the lower elementary, kindergarten through third graders, this is how you're gonna do it. When you go
talking
4, 5,
explain
6,
remote learning versus in class?
and maybe cover both of those. You're gonna have to cover both of those.
So bring a kid in and show instruction, or use,
It's asthmatic, they're easy to wear a mask.
I don't know.
That's a decision between the parent and the local health department and the doctor. Getting to go to school, right, does the same thing. It's all about the risk.
Well, that would be a documented medical condition.
Correct.
Yeah,
My office
absolutely.
is asthmatic. That's a decision between parents and the child and the doctor. They're gonna
So,
make that decision.
we need to know that.
Right, I don't know if you can wear a mask.
Correct.
This is, even as a draft, this is the plan that the board accepts in some form.
I know. It's kind of crunchy.
So that we know whether we need to start over or this is okay. Because then
I think
this is why it's a draft.
any plan you have
It's
is gonna
draft.
have to be changed at some
It's gonna have to be a
point.
draft no matter what.
It's gonna be a draft.
It
Can we
might
change
be
it
a
again
draft
before
for
August
school
17th,
first.
2 or 3
It'll
times?
be a
It might be a
the whole
draft
year.
until May,
Yeah.
you know, because things are gonna come up and change.
Just
Some people are just claustrophobic.
Okay, what we need to decide tonight, if this is the draft, a draft, not the draft, a draft, we can live with to at least give parents and staff somewhere to start. Are you comfortable with this plan? That we can send it out later tomorrow? And that way we can have a turnaround by next Wednesday. And kind of have an idea of what we're looking at.
The question that I had was, should we even give them the option to opt out at the grade school level?
Well,
My
Craig,
question-
I will have some kids that have some families that will have health issues, whether it's them directly or it's a grandparent or
There-
something. I do have had some contact with some people that.
There were a few districts that didn't have it. I think there's a few I've discussed not
Just on
having.
the
Yeah, that's it.
upper and grade
Yeah,
school?
there was no remote.
We have to
option.
think about how many kids are being raised by grandparents or aunts and
There
uncles.
was, I mean,
or
that
things
that
like
was
that,
something that was out
too.
there. There were some remote, there was some that didn't have remote as an option, but I don't know
I just
how the
don't see-
boards will go with that.
Yeah,
But some districts have looked at it.
Dustin, it's still July.
that's the only thing I don't think it's wise.
I'll give you an example. My 8-year-old nephew is currently going through his third grade. If everybody can, there's a good chance he's not gonna go to school this fall, right? He would be that alternative that's gonna be healthy enough
But
to
he
have.
would be that no matter.
Correct, but in the
COVID or not
in the situation, it would still give him the chance to still do online learning, where he can't have at least the opportunity to continue, even though he physically cannot go to school.
Or that would be helpful in his case, to have that remote learning,
Right.
where normally he would just get papers.
Correct, or just have
You know.
something online.
Right.
So do we have to vote separately on these
Right,
high
there is.
issues, masks, those sorts of things, or can we approve it as a whole? Because you don't
It's all
have
in
to.
the plan. I mean, it's
you
a
don't-
plan.
oh, I don't have to revote 6 million times on.
I know,
masks.
right.
It'd be the plan.
I think we would vote on the
Then that would be
plan.
everything that's in the plan. unless you.
No, I just don't
Reasons
like,
to take
I
it.
don't wanna have them, we do
That's not
ourselves
what we're
a
asking.
disservice if we have the
That's not what we're asking
masturbate
for anyway.
every week, or every board meeting or whatever. Okay, that's what I'm.
All right. So what do you want to do? We need a motion. I move we accept the draft plan as presented to be sent out to staff Friday morning, to be sent to the patrons of our district tomorrow afternoon after 3. Did I give you guys enough time? After 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, to be returned by Wednesday. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
So the motion is just that we're sending this out, that we're not voting that we approve it as written.
We can't adopt. Do we want to adopt it?
What did you say in your motion?
To send it out.
Oh, okay, I thought you said.
It says.
Did I say to accept the plan?
Draft plan as presented to be sent to staff.
To accept the draft plan as presented.
Yeah, to accept the draft plan, that's what I thought.
That's
To
what
be
I said.
sent out.
To accept the draft plan as presented and to be sent
Yeah,
out.
That would be different. Yeah. That's what I thought you said.
Any more discussion? This is your chance.
I still don't like the part about the persons with a documented medical condition. Does it just have to be documented, or do they have to bring documentation in? I think that needs to be very clear.
And I think that's up to our administrators, what they will require. That's up to Nurse Angie, what they will require, the county health. Am I correct?
I'd like for it to be a team decision.
So,
I think we have to decide that
so what's
as
the,
going out.
if we're sending this out, we're voting to adopt this and send it out, I don't like that part. That's a wide open area that I believe spells trouble. Because it says persons with a documented medical condition. Okay, it's documented.
That means they have provided documentation and it is documented.
That means the doctor has
That means-
documentation of it.
No, that means we would have proof that they have documentation
Just
from
add
the
a
doctor.
sentence
We
that
can add it
says
in there.
parents are required to provide documentation.
What's that documentation gotta say? Does that need to list the medical condition, or that they are just exempt from wearing a mask?
Just the exemption.
You'd have to have a doctor sign off. Is that what you're asking? You want a doctor to sign it?
I don't want a doctor to have to do anything.
I do.
If
If
I
they
want a
have a
doctor to
medical
sign it.
condition,
We need a
I would
doctor to
say-
say it, that's what I think.
would say from a doctor, I would prefer to have it from a doctor and say, this child can be exempt from a mask
Yeah.
due to, I mean, it doesn't even have to say, just say it can be exempted from wearing a mask.
this child is exempt.
Yes.
Due to
But
medical
signed by a
conditions, not to
doctor.
be named.
No.
Signed by a doctor.
Okay, just so
Because
that.
some, we may already have it in documentation
Right.
at school.
Yeah.
Most people
For some
do not
kids.
know what's going, I have something in their file. But as long as I have it in writing that they're exempt from a mask, signed by their doctor, I'm okay with that. If you
That's
guys,
what-
if admin's okay with that.
That's what I was, we were trying to say, I think.
Mr. Roy, you okay with that too?
All right, well, as long as it's on our wish list, does anybody else have a problem with 175 unwashed masks going on in school? Do teachers have a problem with that?
To be honest, Craig, I thought it through, and if I have to, I was going to wash them myself for them.
The problem though is if they ride the bus and they're required to wear them home.
We also have 200 donated from Rotary that look exactly like that. If somebody comes in and says, you know, if you look at their mask and you're like, that's not keeping anything away from anybody, I mean, that's what they're for.
Will the buses have some
Paper
disposable
ones,
ones?
yeah.
Okay.
Because the kid's gonna show up to get
Right,
on.
right,
They'll have them, so
right.
they'll have one to give us.
Okay. I've taken stuff, coats home, backpacks home.
But we're now talking about COVID.
Well, no, I know, I'm just saying, like, I think there's,
Okay.
we're not gonna make these kids walk around.
Because you worry more about the bacteria infections.
Well, no, I'm just
COVID.
saying, I've not taken,
I
I'm
mean-
saying I've taken them, like, there's a washer at school
Okay.
where we've gone and taken coats and backpacks to get them on. They absolutely haven't had it, but more than likely, I just put it in my bag and tell them that we use one from school. And it's like everything else we're saying, when those things come up, we can work around it, I think. Right.
Do you want the sentence in there that says documentation from a medical provider is required? To be provided to the school nurse?
That doesn't make me a whole lot more comfortable with it. I can tell you as it's written right now, I absolutely don't like it.
Write it.
What do you want changed?
Well, it's her motion. Well, you said, you decide, there's not for me to decide.
Yeah, we're just talking about it, so we can vote it now. Or you can remove your motion and amend it.
What do you want in there?
We also have to be mindful that we're also approving a draft plan, right? That's the
Right, it's
motion.
a
The
draft
motion
plan.
isn't the final plan, it's a draft plan, right? At some point in time, we have to start
We're
somewhere.
approving it.
And that's why we're approving a draft plan to start somewhere. Where can we go from here? I think there's always improvement.
But we
At
would
some point,
revoke it. I mean, once you're on,
But
you're
it's,
on.
you just put draft at it.
I don't know, we revoked the drug policy. But we did.
I just, at some point in time, I don't mind if that statement's in there, but at some point in time, we have to start. School's coming.
I agree
Let's get
100%.
something
We
out
gotta,
and get going.
we gotta start somewhere.
Right.
But he's not wrong in that we could clarify it right now.
Correct.
Yeah.
Then that's
So
fine.
I guess I put it back on you. It's your motion.
But I need to know how we're going to clarify it before I can change my motion.
How would you do it, Jamie?
Because he would have to make a motion to change it. And then we vote on the change, then we vote on
Let's move on.
Yeah, I'll have to get back to you on it.
Well, I think we need it
Well,
now.
we need it now.
I don't think you can go forward without saying that you need a doctor's permission, because you're gonna have 50 people say,
I agree.
I can't wear a mask.
Well, if it doesn't have doctor's permission in there, everybody's gonna beat it with, well, it's a documented medical condition.
Yeah.
My doctor has it.
After mask, can you just say from a medical professional?
Yep, can.
Yes. And it defeats the purpose.
I think you said like here.
It's allowed, we'll be allowed to not wear a mask, and then just from a medical professional.
it. With documentation from a medical professional.
Yeah.
Documentation from a medical professional is required.
Does that, can you guys live with that too? Administrators,
Must be,
Provided.
provided from a,
Provided to the school.
yeah, to the school,
From a medical professional.
from a medical professional. That help? I will amend my motion to include the sentence, the documentation must be provided to the school from a medical professional. Is that okay with the second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Anyone? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign, motion carried 6-0. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All who worked on this.
I also want to extend an absolute thank you to the faculty and all the teachers and everybody that take time, that did contact us and give us opinions. It was much needed, because there's been a lot of wrestling with this. I know, I'm positive all the board members have been wrestling with this and reading about this endlessly. So I do appreciate anybody that contacted me and all the extra work you guys do.
Mr. McEwen?
Okay, the document we changed right there, this last one, I just want to make sure. The learning log, it was provided to you in the original presentation. I think the learning log would be a nice thing. Like, I can create a PDF again that has what we have written now with the changes. And also that learning log, because I think that learning log needs to be in front of the parents so they can kind of start to visualize, oh wait, I have to sign this daily. It's
And
not just,
when I got my PDF, that was already there, so I assumed it was already there.
okay.
So my motion included what I had.
Included the PDF, okay. Because, you know, it is 6 hours daily, not, I can't do 9 hours one day and bank it. I
Yeah.
can't show up Sunday and sit there for 24 hours and
And see,
do
that's
all
the
of
thing,
them.
that was a question I had. You know, if they only watched 5 hours one day, can they make up that, you know? And your guys on junior high and high school, no, because they're real time. Eisenhower, you know, I didn't know, but it's good to know. And that's a decision for Mr. Roy too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for coming out. Thank you for giving us your opinions, and thank you for all you do. I'm not done yet. I'm still saying thank you.
I thought you was gonna send everyone home.
Not yet. No,
Can I get you a stone?
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's all right. Okay. All right. So we did that reopening school. Okay. Next on the agenda.
We need to
Summer
discuss
activities.
summer activities.
Summer activities.
We're excited about that. We need a little direction.
Good.
Okay, this gets kind of difficult each time we have to go through this on summer activities, and I want to point out a few things on that. I know we're getting towards the end, but with the way this year has been, the end is very busy because Keisha extended that camps and such can run right up to the start of regular practice. So currently what we are under, after I visited with county health and we tracked down Dr. Maurer somewhere in Canada or wherever, and that's what we're going through, okay, every time we do this. So we got that she really felt like we shouldn't be in the weight room, but it was her advice, and that, but outside was okay. So that's why we went the way we went. I know that they are concerned that it's kind of on them, which in a way it is, but they just want to kind of be like advisors on this and not like thumbing up, thumb down on whether we're having activities. I get that. So I was wondering if we need to talk a little bit about whether administration can contact them, get their advice on particularly like number of cases are up, number of cases are down, it looks good, we don't see any problem with it, and we can decide from there, or how we want to do it. Because like I said, it took like all day, and they're very busy, but it took all day to get someone to make a decision on that end because they're not real comfortable with it, to get back to us to share the decision then with people that are really wanting to know whether they can go or not with their activity. I just wonder if we could streamline that maybe a little bit some way.
So what exactly are you looking at?
What I'm looking at is that whether it's weekly or whatever, what we've got left, which is not much time, but weekly, that if we check with county health and say, it's fine, keep going the way we are, or you can open it up some more, or we need to close it down. I mean, to advise us. And then we follow the Keisha recommendations for whether it's outside, inside, whatever. Right now, the way we're set, we could have football camp but we couldn't have volleyball camp because it's inside. But if we try to get that defined a little bit more, is the county health only concerned about the weight room only? Or can we adjust the way we're doing the weight room? I mean, we still need some communication with them, but it's kind of difficult when you do a blanket overall because we have some outside activities, some like cross country, if they're getting together. Football, some of theirs is outside. Of course, they feel the need, all of them feel the need for the weight room. And then finally, volleyball, who is inside, cheerleading, dance team. There's several other groups too. And some of them camps. Who can have camp yet? Volleyball and football, right?
Right.
And that's right up to the
Up until the 14th.
So the week before.
Which, typically we'd be moving into the time frame where it'd be hands off, but the weight room could still be open, clear up until that same time we're talking about this time. They just can't do sport specific things. Our guys have typically closed the weight room a little bit early to give kids a break before they have to come back. But this year they've been on break more than they've been in the weight room.
So that's kind of the request on that end of it.
Don't want to be funny, but there's a little irony here because last time he said don't want to meet too much, and here we are back where we're at.
Well, because what I'm saying is county health doesn't want to be the thumbs up, thumbs down on it. So
that's baffling, really. You know what I mean? Somebody's got to be.
Well,
I think our stance should always be if you can present county health with a plan like, okay, we're having a pot of 10 athletes that are going to be in the weight room, socially distanced, they're always with the same people, with masks, so we know like who's together and who works. If they can get behind that plan and okay it, that's fine. But our issue has always been, everything says ask your local health official. If we go against that and Johnny gets COVID, he comes back and says, I got it in the weight room, we voted against a medical professional, I'm liable.
but
like,
we've never done that yet.
No, but that's what I'm saying. If you get the okay, even in the weight room.
Because the last time we had a communication was we had permission to use the weight room, but there was a concern about going out of town for activity.
Yeah.
And they got kind of all into one thing.
Yeah, I think
And that's
as
what
long
caused
as you have the health department's okay in the plan that is set forward for any group, I think that's fine.
Take it off of us and say if you present Keisha's plan to county health, if they approve it,
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, but I would think that
I'm
any
okay with
plan has to be county health for our liability wise.
Absolutely. As long as our liability is taken off of us and county health is okay with it, I would be okay. But,
liable.
oh yes, we
Yeah,
are.
you are. You're personally
Absolutely.
liable.
I don't think so.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
If we go against county health, we are liable. Not anyone else, us 7, personally.
Yeah, if you went against county health. If county health
Absolutely.
doesn't give a advice one way or the other,
There you go.
it's hard.
There's your answer.
I know that for a fact. I have checked. That's
But,
why this has
so,
been a fight.
what were you saying, Craig, again about
I say
patient?
we should follow Keisha's guidelines with county health approval.
There you
Have
go.
that in your back pocket.
Is that okay? Whether, I don't know if it needs to be voted. I just need.
As long as it's a consensus of the board.
We still might want to make a motion because you would oversee the last motion that we made was to open everything back up.
Remember, it was 14, it was a set date.
Right, so I almost think you would probably go ahead and read it like it is, just to take it out of the board decision that would overstep the previous.
And that's fine too. Somebody make the motion then.
I'll make the motion to approve allowing the administration to determine status of summer activities with input from the county health department for the remainder of the summer.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion.
Did you say Keisha?
No, that's approving the administration to determine the status.
And I was wanting to give you the Keisha guidelines.
But that's what we'll do.
And you can put that in there if you wanted to change it, with input from the county health department following CASHA rules for the rest of the summer. If you wanted to change it that way, it's a suggestion.
I'd like to change my motion to include following CASHA guidelines.
Is that okay with the second?
Perfect with those.
Okay. We have a motion to allow the administration to determine the status of summer activities with input from the county health department with the CASHA guidelines for the remainder of the summer. It has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Okay? Anything else? Thank you, ladies, for being here. We appreciate everything you do. I appreciate the board.
There's guys too.
Sorry, sorry.
Can I say one thing? All of us here tonight are going to play a special role in our community of trying to get through this. And it's new ground for every single person, for board members, for administrators, for us teachers. So if we can just try to be as positive as possible, there's going to be challenges. They're not major problems, they're challenges. And if we work together, we can get through these challenges.
Support each other.
So support each other, from the superintendent to the janitor, so that we can all, and especially our one school nurse.
And eat baked goods when provided.
So thank you, and I just wanted to say that everyone to
Thank you for all
work
the
together.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.